America's comeback starts right now.
The day after he announced his candidacy for president in 2015, the New York Post dedicated its front page to Trump in bold gold letters.
I am tonight announcing my candidacy for president of the United States.
7 years later, the paper demonstrated how times have changed with Florida man makes announcement. See page 26, which it ran at the bottom of the front page.
This is not a task for a politician or a conventional candidate. This is a task for a great movement.
A self-created liability for Mr. Trump is that today no one can take anything he says or does at face value. There's got to be an angle in there somewhere. One is that he thinks making himself a presidential candidate will fend off the various prosecutor posses that are chasing him.
Together we will be taking on the most corrupt forces and entrenched interests imaginable.
Another measure of Mr. Trump's 2024 prospects will be the fundraising totals he reports relative to his earlier campaigns.
This will not be my campaign. This will be our campaign altogether.
Back in 2016, Trump's three-state win was thin but real. These people had been missed. And here was a guy who noticed them and took their concerns seriously. The most common phenomenon in politics is depositing an array of grievances in one voice. This was best illustrated in the midterms by Ron DeSantis, who ran on policy successes such as Florida's economy, schools, and personal freedom.
Let's see, there it is, Trump at 71, Ron DeSanctimonious at 10%.
Mr. Trump could see the threat, but to the extent cultural disorganization remains a political issue, Trump's ability to represent it is today weaker than it ever was.
When you're leading, when you're getting things done, you take incoming fire. That's just the nature of it.
At more than 60 minutes, the only thing Mr. Trump left out of his announcement speech was the kitchen sink. And what he didn't say spoke volumes. There was no reference to Ron DeSanctimonious. But more interesting were the former Republican friends he left out. Mehmet Oz, Kerry Lake, Doug Mastriano, Blake Masters, Tudor Dixon, the list goes on.
He deserves another shot. The second election was rigged from him.
You really believe that?
Of course I believe it. Have you seen all of the fraud out of Arizona? Look what happened right now.
Instead, Mr. Trump transformed himself into a solidly issues-oriented candidate running on taxes, energy independence, traditional schooling, military strength, and on and on. He threw his failed Stop the Steal acolytes off the train, while he himself moved on to a more responsible agenda, an agenda that likely would have delivered control of the Senate.
I think Donald Trump was the only candidate in 2016 who could have defeated Hillary Clinton. I think different times call for different leadership.
The crude argument for Mr. Trump getting the nomination is that, as in 2016, his 30% base will again divide his opposition. It's a depressing thought. Republicans are finally on the verge of an invigorating presidential debate among a promising list of next-generation conservative leadership, including, but not limited to, Ron DeSantis, Glenn Youngkin, Mike Pence, and Tim Scott. Instead, we're getting the final season of The Apprentice. Perhaps it's time Mr. Trump heeded his own advice for failure.
You're fired.